Everyone talks about inflation like it's this invisible monster quietly eating away at your money. You hear headlines about rising prices, interest rate hikes, and shrinking purchasing power, but what if everything you think you know about inflation is wrong? What if the way it's measured, reported, and understood by most people doesn't actually reflect what's happening in your wallet? Today, we're diving deep into why inflation isn't what you think and what it really means for your money, your savings, and your financial future. By the end of this video, you'll see inflation in a completely new light. Inflation is more than price increases. Most people think of inflation simply as prices going up. Groceries cost more, gas costs more, rent skyrockets. That's inflation, right? Not quite. Inflation is actually about the value of money itself. When the same dollar buys less than it used to, that's inflation at work. It's a measure of purchasing power, not just sticker prices. Here's the catch. The way inflation is measured often doesn't reflect your personal experience. Governments and financial institutions use indices like the Consumer Price Index, CPI, which track a basket of goods and services. But your basket is different. Maybe you spend more on housing and less on electronics. Maybe your grocery bill is climbing faster than the average. For most people, real inflation, the one that actually affects daily life, can be very different from what the headlines report. Understanding this distinction is crucial. When you hear a 3% inflation rate on the news, that doesn't mean your money only lost 3% of its value. Depending on your spending habits, the real impact could be far higher, or in some cases, even lower. Inflation isn't always bad. Here's something few people consider: not all inflation is harmful. Moderate inflation can actually be a sign of a growing economy. Prices rising because demand is increasing and wages are improving can reflect prosperity, not doom. In fact, mild inflation encourages spending and investment, rather than hoarding cash, which can help the economy expand. The real danger comes when inflation accelerates too quickly or becomes unpredictable. That's when the value of your money erodes faster than your income grows. Savings lose real purchasing power, and investments struggle to keep up. But understanding the type of inflation we're experiencing and its underlying causes is essential before panicking. The real causes of inflation. Most people blame inflation on government money printing or greedy corporations. While these factors can contribute, inflation is far more complex. It's a mix of supply and demand, global trade, labor costs, and even human behavior. For example, when supply chains are disrupted like we saw during the pandemic, goods become scarcer, prices rise, and inflation accelerates. Similarly, wage growth can drive inflation if businesses pass higher labor costs to consumers. On the other hand, technological advances and increased efficiency can suppress price increases, even when money supply grows. The takeaway is this: inflation isn't just a simple too much money problem. It's an ecosystem of economic forces interacting in ways most people don't fully understand. Treating it as a single, monolithic threat leads to oversimplification and poor financial decisions. How inflation really affects your money. Now, let's talk about your wallet. Inflation doesn't hit every part of your finances equally. Some assets appreciate faster than others, some savings accounts lose value quickly, and some expenses rise faster than wages. Cash is the biggest victim. Money sitting in a regular checking account loses purchasing power if interest rates don't keep up with inflation. A $10,000 savings account earning 0.5% interest during 6% inflation effectively loses $550 in value each year. Investments, however, behave differently. Stocks and real estate often rise with inflation because companies and property owners can pass costs on to consumers. Commodities like gold, oil, and even some cryptocurrencies may act as hedges, preserving value when traditional assets lag. Even debt is affected. Fixed-rate loans become easier to repay during inflation because the money you pay back is worth less than when you borrowed it. That's why some billionaires and savvy investors welcome moderate inflation. It erodes liabilities while their assets continue growing. The misleading official inflation numbers. You've probably heard government inflation figures and wondered why your grocery bill or rent feels much higher. Here's why. Official measures often exclude volatile items or adjust for quality improvements. For instance, technology products like smartphones or computers are often adjusted for quality improvements, meaning price increases may be underreported. On the flip side, Essentials like housing and healthcare, which dominate most people's spending, may be rising faster than the reported averages. This is why many people feel inflation more than 5%, even when official numbers claim 2–3%. Understanding that the official rate doesn't always reflect your reality is key to making smarter financial choices. You need to know your personal inflation rate to protect your money effectively. Protecting your money from inflation. So, what can you actually do? First, you need to invest strategically. Cash is safe in the short term, but loses value over time. Stocks, real estate, and inflation-protected securities, like tips in some countries, can help your money grow faster than inflation. Diversification matters here too. Inflation affects sectors differently. Energy, commodities, and consumer staples often rise with inflation, while discretionary spending sectors may struggle. By spreading investments across industries and assets, you reduce vulnerability. Another strategy is to invest in your own earning potential. Higher wages, skills that are in demand, and multiple income streams are the ultimate inflation hedge. Inflation is essentially a relative game. If your income rises faster than prices, your purchasing power grows, even in an inflationary economy. The psychological trap of inflation. One of the biggest mistakes people make is reacting emotionally. Headlines scream, "inflation crisis," and people panic, selling investments or hoarding cash. That's exactly the wrong move. Inflation isn't always catastrophic, and panic decisions often destroy wealth. Instead, understand the mechanics. Know which assets preserve value, which debts are manageable, and which expenses are rising fastest. By thinking strategically rather than emotionally, you can make inflation work in your favor instead of against you. Inflation isn't the same everywhere. Inflation isn't uniform. Different countries, cities, and industries experience it differently. For example, housing in one city may rise 10% annually, while wages increase only 3%. In another region, technology prices may drop even as other costs rise. This disparity is why billionaires and savvy investors focus on opportunities globally. Geographic diversification can protect wealth from localized inflation. It also creates opportunities to profit when some markets are booming while others lag. Understanding where inflation is real, where it's reported artificially low, and where it's an opportunity is what separates smart investors from the crowd. Long-term perspective. Inflation and wealth building. Long-term, inflation is inevitable, but it doesn't have to destroy your wealth. Understanding its nuances lets you structure finances to grow regardless of rising prices. Savvy investors plan decades ahead, balancing cash flow, investments, and debt strategically to ensure purchasing power grows with or faster than inflation. Think of inflation as a tide. You can fight it, or you can ride it. Those who understand it, hedge against it, and leverage it in the right ways often come out wealthier, not poorer. Ignoring it or reacting emotionally is the trap most people fall into. Inflation as a signal, not just a threat. One of the most overlooked aspects of inflation is that it's also a signal, a warning, and an opportunity. Rising prices often indicate where the economy is shifting, which industries are expanding, and where demand is outpacing supply. For example, if housing costs are skyrocketing, it's a signal that property markets are hot, and related investments like construction, home improvement, or real estate tech might outperform. Savvy investors treat inflation like a map. They track which goods, services, or sectors are driving it and position their money accordingly. Instead of seeing it solely as a threat to purchasing power, they see it as a guide for where growth, profits, and opportunity lie. Inflation, in this sense, is like a tide. It lifts some assets while submerging others. Understanding which way it flows can turn what seems like a challenge into one of the smartest wealth-building tools available. The takeaway: rethinking inflation. Here's the real truth. Inflation isn't just prices going up or money losing value. It's a complex interplay of economics, behavior, policy, and markets. It doesn't affect all people or assets equally, and it can even be used strategically to grow wealth. The key lessons: don't panic, understand your personal inflation exposure, diversify your investments, and focus on growing income and assets faster than prices rise. Inflation is only scary if you're unprepared. It becomes manageable and even advantageous if you understand it. So, next time you hear about rising inflation, don't just sigh and tighten your belt. Think strategically. Know how it affects your money personally, protect what matters, and position yourself to grow, even when the headlines scream fear. Inflation isn't your enemy, it's just a force. And those who understand it, harness it, and plan ahead are the ones who win. Remember, real financial power comes from knowledge, strategy, and action, not from hoping prices will stay the same. Start thinking differently about inflation today, and your money will thank you tomorrow.